Hey there YouTube, KSCuber here. It is late, so I have to keep it down a little bit, but today I have an interesting video. It has been a couple days, I know that. Probably make an update video here in a couple days, just kind of mentioning what's going on. But I guess I'm back, and today's video I'm going to be doing a state of the collection. I guess that'd be a watch thing. I don't know, cube collection video, let's just say that. Actually, quick shout out to one of my, I don't know why I call him super fans, but DMC Cubes, I believe is his name, DMC CUBEZ. He's been commenting on a lot of my videos. He actually shouted me out in a couple of his, and he did a cube collection video recently, which kind of encouraged me to do my own thing on that. So anyway, thanks to you. Quick shout out to DMC Cubes. Let's get into the video. Okay, we'll do with the scatterness of my collection and just kind of how spread out it is. It's going to be quite an endeavor to overtake here. But without further ado, I guess I'm just going to start with probably the WCA puzzles, and then I'll move on from there, just going through each variety. As you can see, there's kind of scattered all over my area here. Let's just get into it. Quick puzzle by puzzle breakdown. Okay, so quick change of plans here. Just at first, I think I'm actually going to go by brand name on a lot of these different puzzles. This right here, this big pile, is actually all my Rubik's brand puzzles. I'm pretty sure I'll go with that first. So, without further ado, let's stick the camera up on the tripod there and just go into a one-by-one look through. Okay, so this is going to be in no particular order, so let's just get right into it here with the Rubik's brand things. As I said, this first one here is actually my second Rubik's 2.0 cube. As you can see, it actually turns fairly well. It corner cuts actually 45 on some sides. But this one's all broken in, tensioned a bit, and it's actually Rubik's 2.0, not a Rubik's Speed Cube. Next up here, this is a Rubik's second or third run, probably from the early 2000s. As you can see, this one turns fairly badly. This is actually a advertising cube for Sun Life Financial. Next up here, these are actually going to be a little bit hard to distinguish, the ones with the white opposite yellow. Some of these are wonderful puzzlers, which actually have a couple boxes right here. If you've seen those before, those came out in the 1980s alongside the Rubik's Cube, and they're made in Taiwan. But, as I said, they're hard to distinguish a little bit. So this is either a Rubik's original cube with that color scheme, or it's a Wonderful Puzzler cube. Here's a second Wonderful Puzzler type, and actually I'm pretty sure this is actually original Rubik's cube because it has the blue opposite white. I haven't seen a Wonderful Puzzler in that color scheme. I'm sure they made them, but I haven't seen it. So I'm just going to call that a Rubik's brand cube. A couple of these that fall apart on me here. Those are a little bit fragile, so I have to be careful with a couple of those. This is a Rubik's brand TDK advertising cube. This one's been lubricated a little bit and actually turns fairly okay. It's not been tensioned at all. This here is another actual Rubik's brand cube. This actually has some interesting history. This was my dad's original Rubik's cube from 1981 is when he purchased this one. One of the earlier ones with the white and blue color scheme, otherwise known as the Japanese color scheme, actually lubricated and turns pretty well. Next up here, in that same vein, this is actually Rubik's GameCube, which I guess I'll show you the box later here. I didn't bring that out here. But this is a Rubik's GameCube. This one has been lubricated and actually broken in a little bit. It turns fairly well, but as you can see, it doesn't have a lot of corner cuttings, so you do have some inaccurate turnings. You try to speed solve it. Done an average of 100 on this, and I got around like 35 seconds or something like that. Next up here, we have a plain, straight-up Rubik's 2.0 cube. This one has not been lubricated, or, yeah, it may have been lubricated a little bit. It's not been tensioned at all, so it is very, very bad, very sluggy, locks up a lot, and will barely corner cut anything. So that's just a stock Rubik's 2.0 cube. I've done some solves on that one, but it's still not that great. Next up here, this is either a Wonderful Puzzler or a Rubik's brand cube. As I said before, hard to distinguish. That's what that is, 1980s. This is a Rubik's brand stress ball. They're kind of cool, but it has no twisty puzzle characteristics and is therefore, I don't know, if it's really considered a twisty puzzle as part of my collection. Next up here, we have another vintage Rubik's brand cube or Wonderful Puzzler, either way. Another one of those, actually it's a Rubik's brand cube because it has the white opposite blue. This one, as you can see here, is missing 2 stickers, but is otherwise pretty good shape, turns okay. Next up here, another unknown. I'm pretty sure this is actually a Wonderful Puzzler because it's the one that was new in box. That was just over there. That was in that box over there. Next up here, another, and this one I'm pretty sure is a Wonderful Puzzler or something even similar to that because it definitely feels a little bit cheaper than other ones. You can sort of see the cap outlines under the stickers. And this one right here has the coolest logo of any of my Rubik's brand puzzles, but is unfortunately broken, and I'm glad I didn't try to turn it because it will explode. There's a couple broken pieces inside it. Next up here, we have a picture cube, and I actually have another one of these. I'm not sure if I got that one or not. I don't see it over there, but anyway, this is a Boeing Rubik's brand picture cube. That's pretty neat. It's been broken in and lubricated a little bit. It turns fairly well. It's actually possible to speed solve this one. Next up here is a Rubik's brand, again from the early 2000s or similar. It's Penske/SML advertising cube. This one actually turns fairly well. Next up here, this is actually the only modern, but also pre-Rubik's 2.0 Rubik's Cube I have. This one, the stickers are kind of peeling on it, but otherwise, and also it turns really horribly, but otherwise, I guess this is it. It's the original Rubik's. Okay, and this one here is a Rubik's 2.0 cube, brand new, sealed in the box. I may take it out of the box at some point, but for right now, it is sealed in there still. Next up here, I guess we have a Rubik's Slide, some sort of Rubik's type video game. Never played it before, never tried it out. I shouldn't say video game, but more of a light game. It moves around in all directions, and you can do games with it. More just for the collection than anything else. I also have Rubik's Revolution, but I'm not sure what happened to that. And then next up here, I have a Rubik's brand picture cube again. This is the Sox, which I do not know baseball actually that well. I just picked it up because it's fairly inexpensive. So the White Sox, maybe? I don't know. This one's been broken in a little bit and turns okay. A little bit worse than the Boeing Cube, but not too bad, all in all. And then next up here, I'm not sure if you can see that whole book there, and I guess you can. Mastering Rubik's Cube, the solution to the 20th century's most amazing puzzle by Don Taylor. I'm supposed to have another book coming, but that's the only one I have right now. That's vintage and kind of the time period. Next up here, we have a Rubik's World puzzle. That's a really neat puzzle from the 1980s. I forget if it has a date on there. And it does ITC 1982. It's in the shape of a ball, making turning fairly difficult, but as far as turning goes, it turns very well. It's actually, all I've done is pretty much disassemble this thing a little bit and clean the dust and dirt out of it. And once I did that, it really turned fairly well, probably just because of all the years of turning. When I first got it, it turned really bad. But that's a pretty neat one, missing the original stand, but otherwise pretty neat. Next up here, I guess I'll just put both of these in frame. I have two of the Rubik's missing link. As you can see, they're missing the top and bottom little plaques on there. I just realized from J.R. Cuber's video that those actually are supposed to be there. There actually is something there. You can see it turns top and bottom. And they're just the links. It took me probably an hour to solve these intuitively after a while. And I just had this one sort of parity case on this one here, which I'm not exactly sure how to solve that. Which I might figure it out sometime. Probably not, just for display. They look great on most sides, except for that one there. Next up here, I have a Rubik's Void Cube. This one's a fairly good, actually, Void Cube from the Rubik's brand. Really haven't felt a lot of good Void Cubes. I wish that the Thunder Cube would actually be mass-produced at some point. Next up here, also from my dad's collection, I have the original mini Rubik's brand cube. As you can see, it turns very, very poorly, and I would be very hesitant to turn this thing quickly, as it might break. But as you can see, white opposite blue, it is an original keychain or mini Rubik's Cube. Next up here, this is a pretty pointless puzzle. It looks a bit like a dodo cube. If you look at it like this and they flip it over and whoa, there's a monkey and a green side and a Rubik's logo. So I don't know exactly. Say kids, Rubik's 2x2. I basically had to put it back together after it had fallen apart. Fairly easy to do, and now I have the Rubik's Junior Cube, I guess, for my collection. Whoop-de-doo. And next up here, this one's going to be hard to see due to its small size. It's the world's smallest mass-produced Rubik's Cube, at least that's the claims of the creator. I know there's the MoYu Nano and all that, but those ones do not come fully assembled. So this is the world's smallest fully assembled mini Rubik's Cube, maybe. But this is 20 millimeters across, actually around 21, even though they mark it as 20. But it actually turns okay once you break it in, straight out of the box. They are completely horrible. But it's kind of an interesting puzzle for the collection. Nonetheless, it definitely feels a lot more sturdy than the MoYu Nano or similar. Next up here, I guess we have one last either Wonderful Puzzler or Rubik's brand cube. I don't think I went through this one already, just sitting over there. And then we have a, I don't know, I guess it's the original 1980s Rubik's Cube. This one has no stickers on it though, because they fell off or were peeled off at some point. Just peel the stickers off, they said. Next up here, we actually have a new old stock Rubik's Revenge puzzle. This one actually, out of the box, turns pretty poorly, but it is definitely solvable. I saw J.R. Cuber's video. He actually got one that was lubed and used and actually turned fairly well, so I'm actually pretty impressed with that. Came out in 1982, I've heard, and there it is, the Rubik's Revenge, otherwise known as the Rubik's 4x4. Next up here, this is actually the GAN Rubik's Collab 3x3. It's actually a speed cube from Rubik's that doesn't suck, which I don't know, the 2.0 debatably sucked. So this one's a lot better. Obviously has 45° plus corner cutting. I'm not sure my tensions are quite there right now. And a really good reverse. But it's just an interesting puzzle all in all. Rubik's / GAN's tiled collaboration cube 3x3. Introduced at the Worlds in Paris. I'd have to go look around a little bit more, but I'm not sure I'm going to do that. Actually, I have another one of the world's smallest Rubik's Cubes originally, or I should say still in the original box. And maybe I took it out of the box. I forget exactly if I unboxed that one or not. I might have, but either way, haven't seen it yet. So we see that later. We see it later. And unless I find anything else, this video is going to be a little bit scary if I do, but this is the Rubik's. Let's just turn autofocus on here quickly so it'll actually focus. It's a lot larger. This is the Rubik's Light Cube. Let's see if it has a charge in it. I misplaced the cord about a year ago. Have not been able to charge it, but after a year, it's still glowing with minimal use. And as you can hear, this thing is quite noisy. It has something similar to Rubik's 2.0 ball mechanism, and it's really a neat cube. All in all, 130 millimeters. As you can see, it definitely is a bit large for my frame. If I was really smart, I'd zoom out a little bit there. But anyway, I guess that's the Rubik's Light Cube. Okay, and actually searching for the next batch of puzzles, which will be Meffert's brand, I did find the other mini Rubik's Cube. As you can see, this one turns completely awfully. Straight out of the box, actually almost needs full hand turns to make it usable. So it has a core design very similar to like a snap together dollar store cube, making it just a little bit harder to break in, or at least it needs a little bit more of a break-in period. Okay, well I'm just gonna go through these in a batch. Pretty sure these are all the Meffert's puzzles I have, but as you can see here, I have the Meffert's Challenge, as they call it there, otherwise known as a pillowed pyraminx. And actually I really like the turning on this puzzle. It's very calming, or I don't know, relaxing, if you could say that. But anyway, it's pretty clacky also. And then next up here is the Meffert's, I don't know exactly what their name is, but I call it the Master Pyraminx. I really didn't mind this puzzle to start with, but actually in solving it a little bit, it pops quite a bit. Like actually these little pieces like to come out. So it's a fairly nice looking puzzle, fairly nice high quality puzzle, but it's definitely not something I recommend purchasing just for the collection. And last but not least, as you can see, an unsolved Professor's Pyraminx. I've tried a couple different ways to solve it. Can't figure it out yet. I wish there was a good tutorial online. I'm sure there is. I have to look around a little bit more. But this is the 5x5 variant of the Pyraminx. It turns the worst off all of them there. Tips especially are pretty tough to turn. And the rest of the puzzle is just a little bit stiff. It's not a big deal. I mean, you're not trying to speed solve this at all. So anyway, those are my Meffert's puzzles. Okay, so I think next up here, I'm going to go through some vintage and oddball puzzles. So without further ado, let's get into those. Actually, one quick change before I get on here. Have another Rubik's puzzle here. So Rubik's 2x2, the new one, the Rubik's 2.0 2x2, if you will, with the tiles. Next up here, we have a really interesting puzzle that I've had several of over the years, but I've ended up selling and done a couple other things with them. I have solved one before, and I'll probably solve this one here at some point. This is an Alexander Star. I forget who exactly this is made by. It's made by ITC, made in 1982, same time as the Rubik's Globe. And it's really an interesting puzzle. As you can see, it moves sort of like that. I've heard they made a stickerless version of it, or at least one without, well, I guess without stickers, but I mean the painted version of this one here, because the stickers definitely tend to peel on these, but I've not seen one of those, so I guess it's just the stickered version. Do like that puzzle, and it'd be nice to get one fully functional at some point. That one works, but I mean it's pretty stiff and it could use some setup. Next up here is a PG and Company barrel cube, or should I say, I forget exactly what the name of it is, but it's like a hexagonal cube of some sort. I don't know. It has a bunch of different facets, and actually maybe it's a dodecanal. I don't remember. Anyway, it's just a 3x3 with cut down edge pieces and corner pieces there, and it's, as you can see here, new old stock, sealed in the original box, probably from the 1980s sometime. Next up here, we just have a little snake cube, as you can see, made in Taiwan. This is definitely vintage and new in the box. Next up here, we have a Scrabble cube, or a Scrubble cube, something like that. More modern than anything else, but it's made out of Rubik's 4x4, and I found it kind of interesting, so it's for the collection. Next up here, we have a Parker Brothers The Orb Cube. This was made sometime in the 1990s, actually. And as you can see, it's just in the original box, with some distressed shrink on the other side. It is a twisty puzzle. It twists in the middle and the balls go around. And last but not least, not actually a twisty puzzle, but I have a rack 'em up Tommy Pocketfuls puzzle there. I've solved this one several times just intuitively. Basically just move around these balls and just kind of try to get them all on the same layer with the same color. An interesting puzzle that I have. Okay, well, it's actually gonna be pretty difficult to make sure I have every single puzzle from each brand here, but this is Shengshou, so without further ado, let's get right into those. Let's start with some just miscellaneous puzzles. This first up here is a Shengshou 2x2 Morphix puzzle. I forget exactly what it's named. Pure Morphix, I think is the name of it. But anyway, this one turns very well and actually is a little bit more interesting than the other mass-produced Pure Morphix, being pillowed and also turning a bit better, so being a lot smaller. Next up here is the only other Morphix puzzle that I have from Shengshou. This is the Shengshou Master Morphix, the 3x3 variant. As you can see, it turns pretty well, but not quite as well as like the QiYi Master Morphix. Next up here, let's just quickly go through my mirror blocks from Shengshou. First up here, I have a silver mirror blocks. This one I've had the second longest of any of them here. Next up here, this is my most recent addition. This is a white and gold Shengshou mirror blocks. And then I have the oldest Shengshou mirror blocks that I have. This is the unstickered, at least stickers removed, Shengshou mirror blocks. All turn fairly well. Next up here, let's just quickly get all my Shengshou Linglong 46mm 3x3s on screen here. I have quite a few of them, at least there's 4 of them. And I might have one more stuck around here somewhere, but there's 4 Shengshou Linglong 3x3s. I'll be doing a review on these here pretty shortly because I really do like these puzzles. They turn very well for their size and just are very enjoyable to solve due to the smooth turning feeling. Next up here, just a random one. This is a Shengshou Gem 2x2, I believe. I'm not sure, and I knew I bought a Shengshou Gem 2x2, and I think this must be it right here. It turns okay. I mean, it's not that great. I think it only tensions on 3 sides, so it's kind of like one of those cheaper mechanisms. Next up here, this is a Shengshou Mini 5x5, also from the Linglong series, presumably. As you can see, this one turns fairly well. It's 57mm, so exactly the same size as a standard 3x3. This one's a 56mm 3x3, I think, but still, that's a pretty nice puzzle. I like the travel size of it, and it turns fairly well. Doesn't compete with the top 5x5s on the market, but it's just nice to have a miniature puzzle like that. Next up here, we have 2 Shengshou Legend 3x3s. There's some of the big legends here coming up in a minute. These don't turn quite as well as the Warrior W from QiYi, which I usually compare them to. And actually, this is not a Shengshou Legend. That's the other Shengshou 3x3 I have. There's the Shengshou Legend. But these turn fairly well. I mean, they corner cut 45 on most sides. This catch and are a little bit, I don't know, there's something about them that I just don't quite like as much as the Warrior W. Anyway, next up here, this is a Shengshou Wind, first model Shengshou Cube. It turns fairly poorly. There's quite a bit of resistance to the turning. It's a little bit stiff, I should say. But other than that, it's a fairly good cube. I used to use these all the time. Next up here, this is a Shengshou Big Legend 7cm cube. As you can see, it is quite large. In the hand, it will corner cut exactly like the normal Legend. And I have a few of these. There's 2 of them, and let me grab the third from right here. So I have 3 of these right here, as you can see, and those are the Shengshou Big Legends. Next up here, another set of Shengshou cubes. These are actually, this was my main for a long time there. It's the Shengshou Gem 3x3. This one here has been significantly lubed, and I haven't had a chance to break it in yet. But this will cut 45, and it'll actually have full quarter cutting. Most of the time, it's actually a fairly impressive cube, along with the textured plastic. It makes it a really interesting cube. It was my main for a while, and I'm not sure if it still is now, because I'm doing that main thing. This one, as you can see, hasn't been lubed quite as much, and it's a lot more clacky. It's a very fast and smooth cube. This one also is in cube and a cube, plus center switch and some other things there. I don't know, some sort of display pattern. Next up here, I should have done this with the mirror blocks, but here's a Shengshou 2x2 mirror blocks. This one turns fairly well, only 2x2 mirror blocks in the market as far as I know, and it's a fairly nice one. Next up here, this is a Shengshou Master Pyraminx. It's the best Master Pyraminx on the market, and a lot of people have these. It's basically a 4-layered Pyraminx puzzle, as you can see, and turning is fairly good for the type of puzzle it is. It's a neat puzzle for sure. And next up here is a Shengshou Megaminx. I was going to record external audio here, but that just went out for memory full or whatever. I'm just going to keep going on the camera mic. No big deal. This camera has pretty good microphones built in. Just like to have the extra professionalism of the nice audio. If I can, I'll get that set up better sometime. But anyway, this is a Shengshou. Man, why don't I always forget what this thing's called? The Make It Minx. And as you can see, it's a checkerboard pattern, more of a display than anything else. I have better Mega Minxes than that one. And next up in the Shengshou Minx puzzle thing, I have a Shengshou Terra Minx. I had this in checkerboard for the longest time and decided to do a review video on it. So actually that will be coming out probably a little while. But anyway, I need to do a full solve on that. That's why it's scrambled right now. This one turns very well. Definitely the best Terra Minx on the market. The only other one is MF8. And this one's really nice. And let me look around for a minute, but I think that's it for Shengshou puzzles. Let's get on to the next batch. And actually, how could I possibly forget the Shengshou 11x11? This one's currently in that fancy pattern I outlined in one of my other videos. But as you can see, Shengshou 11x11, it feels pretty flimsy and pops very easily for me. Might just be my example of it, but I'm definitely getting Yuxin 11x11 in the future, but that's the Shengshou 11x11. I forgot that one. Okay, so I'm not going to take the camera off the tripod for this one here, but I guess these are all my Yuxin cubes. So without further ado, let's get into those. First up here, we have an original Yuxin 5x5. I don't know the exact name on that. I just know that I've had it for a long time, and it was the first Yuxin 5x5 to come out. And then next up after that, going to the 5x5 theme, we have the Yuxin Fire 5x5. This one turns a little bit differently, noticeably differently than the other 5x5 there, but not significantly. I mean, my times are about the same on it. It has the same catching issues, which I'm not sure if maybe it'll, yeah, see like that, where it starts falling apart. So I'm not really into the Yuxin 5x5 because of the catching issue, but it is my main right now currently, and it's about the best one I have. I'll have to try some more in the future. Next up here, we have a Yuxin stickerless standard. This is actually the first Yuxin cube, not the Yuxin Fire. I forget the exact name of it. The Yuxin Unicorn, or I don't remember. I bought one when it first came out. I still don't know the name of it to this day. It's just the standard Yuxin cube. Have another one here in stickered variants. I've had this one the longest out of a lot of my speed cubes here. This one actually I bought right when I got back into speed cubing. It's another Yuxin standard. Next up here, we have a couple Yuxin Fires, one in stickered, one in stickerless. Yuxin Fire turns fairly well, feels a little bit cheaper plastic than these other Yuxin there, has a little bit different design, and apparently this is a stickered Yuxin Fire, and this one actually turns a lot better than the stickerless variant. Not sure what about it is, but I do like this one a little bit more. Two Yuxin Fires. Next up here, let's just get the Yuxin Light Cube out of the way. As you can see, it lights up and has a pretty crazy pattern on there. Turns fairly well, and that's what it is. Yuxin Light Cube. Next up here, we have the Yuxin 2x2, which I believe is my current main. Right next to me, the QiYi. I really didn't like the, see, it was the X-Man 2x2. It popped really bad on me first time I used it, and I don't know. I haven't really liked it ever since, but that's the Yuxin 2x2. Next up here, we have a couple of Yuxin Mega Minxes. This is the first one here. As you can see, just a standard Yuxin Mega Minx with the ridges and stickerless. I have another one here with the checkerboard pattern. Currently my main Mega Minx. I don't do a lot of Mega Minx, but it is a pretty good one as far as those go. Fairly inexpensive also. Next up here, kind of small in the camera, but this is a Yuxin Mini 3x3. I believe this one is 30 millimeters, and as you can see, turns very well. Next up here, we have the Yuxin Panda 2x2, which as you can see is pretty large in the frame, turns fairly well, has a very basic mechanism, but does corner cut a little bit. And that's an interesting animal puzzle right next to the Yuxin Tiger 2x2, which has the exact same characteristics as the Panda, and is just a very large 2x2. If I compare it to that 2x2 I had out here before, as you can see, quite a size difference. And next up here, this is the only Yuxin 4x4 I have. I've had the other one before, but this is a different 4x4. And as you can see, it actually turns okay. It's very, very blocky and square looking and feeling, but it's not quite as bad to turn. I don't know, it's definitely not my favorite 4x4, but it's not quite as bad as I expected it to be when I first saw it. And next up here, we have a Yuxin Pillowed 3x3. It's actually cut down into a pillow rather than extended up like a lot of the pillowed cubes are. As you can see, it is definitely quite small compared to a normal 3x3. Turns very well, and about the best pillowed cube on the market, as far as I know. Okay, and actually I'm not completely convinced these are all my Cyclone Boys puzzles, but those are all the ones that I was able to dig out in a short amount of time, and I'm pretty sure that's it. Those are my Cyclone Boys puzzles. Without further ado, let's go through them. Okay, so first up here, as you can see, this is the Cyclone Sculpted 2x2. Cyclone Boys, I should say, and this one cuts around 45 degrees with ease, and it's really, just all in all, a very nice puzzle. Next up here, I have a Cyclone Boys mirror blocks in gold and black, really loose and kind of cheap feeling compared to, I don't know, the Shengshou mirror blocks, but it does corner cut a little bit better, and I don't know. That's just interesting puzzle to me. Other Cyclone Boys mirror blocks. Really not a huge fan of the Cyclone Boys mirror blocks. They have a little bit catching, and they're a little bit fast and floppy. Best way to put it, maybe. Next up here, a Cyclone Boys 2x2. It's a standard one. Turns fairly well, as you can see. Next up here, a Cyclone Boys mini 4x4, which I really like this puzzle. It's the same size as a standard 3x3, so 57 millimeters, and it turns fairly well. Turns nearly on par with some of the better 4x4s, not quite, but close enough. Well, I use this a lot, kind of as my main. Next up here, we have another Cyclone Boys 3x3. I'm not sure if this is the same as the other one there, but it definitely feels fairly well, fairly fast. Corner cut's almost 45, and just all in all, another cube like that. There's my first mini Cyclone Boys cube. I forget if I showed off that other one yet, but I have two of these. Basically, they're Cyclone Boys mini cubes, around 40 millimeters. Turn fairly well, not super great, not super bad. Cyclone Boys mini cubes. And next up here, this is the Cyclone Boys mini cube I'd say nobody should ever get. This is just a snap together type cube, and as you can see, it turns fairly horribly. But it's just another mini Cyclone Boys cube and a little bit different one. And last but not least, this is the Cyclone Boys 6x6. This is my only 6x6 right now. Turns fairly well, doesn't corner cut the best, but the turning is very smooth and quick, and have any pops on it at all, and also not the annoying lockup you get with like the Yuxin puzzles. Okay, next up here, these are all my QiYi puzzles. As you can see, I have quite a number. Let's get right into them. Let's try and work in a little bit more of an organized fashion this time. Let's just start with 3x3s here. As you can see, this is a QiYi Warrior W 3-color cube, kind of set up like a Penrose cube. Basically, it's made out of a QiYi Warrior W, just switch the pieces, and then it turns into this 3-color cube. Next up here, another one of those. As you can see, this one has the QiYi logo on there. These are the matte Warrior W's. Really do like these cubes. They turn very well. As you can see, corner cutting almost 45. On some cubes you can get 45. Next up here, this is actually a 2-color conjoined, or I should say like adjoining faces 2-color cube. Also made out of a QiYi Warrior W. Next up here, this is actually a QiYi Dimension Cube. I do like the turning on this cube. It has an interesting sticker shade thing going on there, or I should say stickerless insert shade. And also this is not a QiYi Dimension, but I decided to put it in here. This is actually the timing cube, but it has very similar stickers, so this is where I'm going to put it in the lineup. Turns fairly similar to the QiYi Dimension cube, but out of the box it was a little bit catchier. As you can see, it has a timing module there. Wait for it to beep, and then it'll go. Just basically saw that from one of the other YouTubers and decided to pick it up. Next up here, we have a QiYi 2x2 with the matte plastic, once again, in stickerless. I really do like the matte plastic, and this one's a pretty good 2x2. And I guess I was trying to be organized there, but here's another Warrior W. Let's see, is this one correct scheme? I think it is. Yes, this is. This is our first non-2 or 3-color cube. As you can see, turns very well. Corner cut's almost 45. Like I said, these could be made at corner cut 45 if you get them set up correctly. Next up here, this is actually an older QiYi puzzle. It's a QiYi Thunderclap version 2. When I say older, I mean older than the Warrior W. Anyway, this is my only Thunderclap type puzzle, and it definitely turns fairly well. Next up here, we have a QiYi Speed Scube. I'm really bad at Scube, but I do have this one here. It has the ball bearings in it, as you can hear, and turns very well. Next up here, a QiYi, another QiYi 2x2. This may or may not be a different one, but it's stickered as opposed to the stickerless matte. And then one more QiYi 2x2. This one again is stickered. And next up here we have another 2-color cube, QiYi Warrior W. This one's orange and red. And also another 2-color cube. This one is green and blue. Here we have a 3-color cube in the obviously opposite configuration. Red opposite red, green opposite green, all that kind of thing. Instead of the Penrose variant. And next up here we have a QiYi Sail, standard size. Turns fairly well. Next up here we have a QiYi standard silver mirror blocks. Have a green stickerless mirror blocks, which is kind of funny, call it stickerless because it doesn't have any shades, but it's all one color. And a QiYi wire drawing blue mirror blocks, as you can see right here. Actually, it's kind of interesting shade of blue, more dark. And then we have a matte finished QiYi 4x4. It's actually a fairly good 4x4, but it's not the best 4x4 around. It's interesting, and I like the matte stickerless on there. Next up here, we have the QiYi Wuji, I believe is the name of the 7x7. This is the QiYi 7x7. Mine's getting better with some break-in, but out of the box, man, I really did not like this cube. It was very stiff, first of all. It just was not that fast, and it really, I don't know, it just locked up quite a bit and had some weird locking issues. But now, like I said, it's getting a little bit better, and hopefully with more break-in, it'll be better. I've heard a lot of people say good things about it, which is why I'm pretty critical on this puzzle. But it's a good cube nonetheless. And I believe this is another 3-color, opposite color QiYi Warrior W. A few of those, obviously. And here's a QiYi 2x2x3. It's actually a very well-turning puzzle. Very nice. As you can see, it turns very well. Next up here, this is actually my favorite, Master Morphix. Actually has the same stickerless matte shades as the other ones there, and is a little bit larger than the Shengshou Master Morphix. Really do like this puzzle here. Next up here, we have the QiYi Ivy Cube. As you can see, I have it in a display pattern right now. It sells fairly similar to a Pyraminx, and it's just all in all a very interesting puzzle from QiYi. And next up here, I have a couple of these QiYi Big Sails. I thought I had 3 of them, so I might have another one laying around here somewhere, but basically it's a 67mm variant of the QiYi sail. I have 2 of them, as you can see right here, and possibly one other one somewhere else. Okay, well, my MoYu/MoYu sub-brands, YJ, etc. puzzles are all not in the frame. There are definitely too many to show here, so let's just quickly go to the review and get through those. Also, before I get into those too heavily, let's just quickly show this thing here. This is actually a QiYi wind mirror that I forgot to show off before. Also, there are 2 different MoYu puzzles downstairs, which would be the MF3 Cubing Classroom. Let's see, what's the one called? One's a wind mirror, and then there's another, I think it's a mirror blocks from the Cubing Classroom series, but I'm not sure. But other than that, let's start out with the 2x2s and get to 3x3s. This is a YJ, or a MoYu translucent 2x2. I'm not sure the exact type of 2x2 it is. Just know it's a translucent 2x2. Next up here, we have a Cubing Classroom MF3S. Turns very well. Another Cubing Classroom MF3, or MF2S, I should say, turns very well. And getting into 3x3s, first up here, we have a YJ translucent Yulong, I believe is what this one is. A MoYu Cubing Classroom Mini Cube, 50mm. I believe this is a MoYu Hualong stickerless. A YJ Yulong again in transparent stickerless. A YJ Curate Cube, I believe is what this one's called. A MoYu MF3S. These tend to turn very well and corner cut very well. The stickerless ones, more so than the stickered ones, but all pretty good. Next up here, I believe this is a MoYu MF3 that turns fairly well, but it could also be, actually, you know what? I'm going to change my answer. This is a YJ Guanlon Enhanced. This actually turns fairly well, better than the MF3 in my opinion. Next up here, we have a MoYu Hualong stickered. This one turns a little bit sluggish, but has not been lubed or tensioned. Next up here, another MF3 RS. This is a Mohan Shosu, a sub-brand of MoYu 3x3. Get the exact name of the 3x3, turns fairly well. Next up here, this is a MoYu, I believe this is the GTS2. This one turns very well, though a bit uncontrollable due to the speed of it. Full corner cutting, everything you expect from there, a bit smaller size. Next up here, we have a translucent YJ Guanlong, a pretty interesting puzzle, stickered normally, and actually turns better than most Guanlongs I've tried before. Next up here, I'm assuming this is a YJ cube. I'm not actually sure. It came with something rattling from the factory and missing a center cap. So whatever this is, that's what it is. Next up here, this is a MoYu Mini Oolong, I believe. This one turns very, very well, and I actually really like the feeling of this puzzle. It feels sort of like dice, and very heavy and very robust compared to some other ones. Next up, we have another Cubing Classroom 50mm Mini Cube, another improved Guanlong, or Guanlong Enhanced, a MF3 RS stickerless cube. As I said, these turn better, the stickered variants. Maybe the sticker ones would turn better with break-in, but this one just turns amazingly. Next up here, a MF3 dice cube. Turns just like an MF3. And next up here, believe this is either it's another MF3. This is probably an MF3 right here. Next up here, MF3 RS stickered again. And here actually is a Z-Cube carbon fiber stickered puzzle, but I put in the MoYu puzzles because that's a very similar mechanism to the MF3S, I believe. And next up here is an MF3S. Actually has a matte stickerless thing, kind of like the QiYi, which is kind of interesting. So I do have a bunch of MoYu MF3s. I literally purchased 125 of those for use in a cube mosaic. I also have some MF3 RSs down there and a couple other things. So probably in all, another 130 3x3s, very similar to this one. Not going to go get those, but I do have another 130 of those, so I guess those are somewhere. Next up here, we have the YJ foot cube. As you can see, white plastic, black side, very noisy turning, and it's a snap together construction. And this here is a Canon battery pack. It decided to run out right in the middle of filming here, and luckily I had another one on hand, actually in my pocket, to replace it, so I just replaced that. Anyway, if that didn't get on video, here's a YJ foot cube. Next up here is a MoYu bearing cube. That's just MoYu cubing classroom cube with the bearings in it. So up here, this is a YJ. This one's actually been converted into a cutter cube of sorts, but it's just a normal YJ Fisher cube, or is it a windmill cube? I can't recall. That's a windmill cube right there. Next up here is a YJ heart cube. As you can see, I thought I had it all solved, but I cannot figure out the last layer, so obviously I have a piece in the wrong spot or something. I'll figure that out sometime. Next up here is a YJ elephant cube. As you can see, just turns, it's a normal 2x2. It's pretty nice. And next up here is a YJ lucky cat cube. I have quite a few of these. Let's see how many I can bring out here. Guess there's 1, 2, and I think I have one still in the box, and I'm pretty sure I have another one floating around somewhere, but either way, there's 3 YJ cat cubes. Those are pretty cool, 2x2 shape modifications. Next up here, let's just go all the way up. This is a MoYu MF7S, my 7x7 of choice, faster and better than the Wuji, in my opinion, at least right now. Once I get the Wuji set up and working properly, this one will probably go back burner or backup main. It definitely has some, I mean, it's pretty blocky in construction, but once you get going, it turns fast and smooth as most of it. It doesn't corner cut super well. Well, yeah, that's pretty impressive. But anyway, it's a really good budget 7x7, actually a really good 7x7 in general. Next up here, this is a MoYu magnetic pyraminx. I'm not going to attempt pyraminx turns because I cannot do pyraminx. Like, I've barely ever solved a pyraminx. I think my record's like 2 or 3 seconds, but I mean my average is nowhere near that. It's like 12 seconds or something. So pyraminx, MoYu magnetic, and I also have a MoYu with bearings, pyraminx right here. So pretty cool. Say MoYu cubing classroom, Mirror S cube. As you can see right here, it has some identical layers compared to a normal mirror cube. I believe those two are identical and these two are identical, so it makes it a little bit odd solving experience. Not a huge fan of this one, but it's an interesting puzzle nonetheless. Next up here, I'm not actually sure if this is YJ or not, but I'm assuming this is a YJ Axis cube. As you can see right here, this is the one that has all the pieces that jet out all over the place. Just recently figured out how to solve one of these. It's pretty cool 3x3 shape modification. Next up here, here's an actual YJ Fisher cube. I was confused why I had 3 of those. Apparently one's a windmill cube. So there's a YJ Fisher cube. Turns about the same as a YJ Yulong or MF3. And here's another YJ Fisher cube. I have 2 of those. And next up here is a MoYu Magnetics cube. I don't remember if I showed this one already, but probably not. So here it is. And then here is a MoYu MF4 or MF4S. I don't know the naming on all those there. This is a 4x4 from the Cubing Classroom series. Not super great, but not horrible. And here's the 5x5 from that same set. The MoYu Cubing Classroom cube set, 2x2 through 5x5. And last but not least, I think I'll look through for just a minute to make sure I didn't miss any, but here is a MoYu Guanpo, YJ Guanpo, something like that, I believe, 2x2. Actually, there's one more here that I spotted. It's a YJ Apple Cube. As you can see right there, it's neat 3x3 shape modification, similar to the Heart Cube, but actually it's that stem too. And also I have a translucent 4x4. Not sure if I showed that one already, but I don't remember doing that, so I'm just going to show it off again if I didn't. But there's a YJ translucent 4x4, or MoYu translucent 4x4, can't recall. And we're getting to the end here. Here is a MoYu Mastermorphix. Doesn't turn quite as well. It turns a little bit better than the Shengshou, but it's not quite as large as the QiYi, so I really don't like this one quite as much as the QiYi. And maybe a little bit better than the Shengshou. Same size as the Shengshou, just a normal pillowed Mastermorphix. And now looking at that, I think I got them all down. on to the next set. Okay, we're finally reaching the end of the video. I'm not sure how long till it's over here, but I guess I have a good number of cubes in front of me. These are the final cubes before I'm done with all the cubes. So let's go through them. Some are name brands, some aren't, but they're just ones that didn't really fit into a specific category or didn't have enough to make a full brand name set of them. Okay, just going in completely random order as usual. This is a Kung's design, I believe, or no, this is an X-Man 2x2. Almost got that wrong. I think it's X-Man. I don't know exactly. This was a very good 2x2 until I had like a bad pop on it, and now it's kind of catchy and kind of odd. So I'm not sure exactly how much I like that one, but it's a X-Man or Kong's Design 2x2. Next up here, I have an X-Cube Super Floppy Cube. As you can see, it rotates like that. Turns pretty well. A little bit different than the Lan Floppy Cube or Super Floppy Cube. Not exactly the same. I have another one right here, and then I have a Lan here, which I'll grab. And there's the Lan. This one's actually been restickered with CubeSmith stickers. Turns very well, but it catches a little bit more in the X-Cube. That's the Lan Super Floppy Cube. Okay, next up here, this is probably an X-Cube brand or a Lan or something like that. Void Cube, I'm not exactly sure, but it's some sort of Void Cube. Next up here, we have the Kung Fu King Fen 4x4. As you can see, this one turns fairly well, and it's my main 4x4 at the moment, if I'm not using the mini Cyclone Boys one. Next up here, these are Diane puzzles. I have a set of them, I guess. Made these a long time ago. These are Diane Zanchi stickerlesses. They've been made into phantom cubes, one with black stickers, one with white stickers. Both turn very well. They're Diane Zanchis. I've been tempted many times to pull the stickers off them and use them, especially when I didn't have any good speed cubes at the time. But they've stayed as they are, phantom cubes, for a while now. Pretty neat. Next up here, this is a dollar store cube, a little bit larger, probably a 62mm if I had to guess. But just a normal dollar store cube. Turns pretty horribly. Snap together design. As you can see here is another dollar store cube, this time with weird racing patterns on it. Here's a ghost hand, glow in the dark, 3x3, actually turns fairly well, uses a Rubik's mechanism. It's been broken in with around 100 solves. Next up here we have two, I believe these are Wit Eden or Maru or something like that. I'm pretty sure they're Wit Eden mini 3x3s, actually tensionable and work fairly well. They do not have torpedoes though, so they do pop occasionally, but they're pretty neat. They were the best mini 3x3s before the Yuxin came along. Next up, I have that, whatever that is. It's missing a quarter and just in poor shape. It's like superhero, comic book stuff, 3x3. Probably one of the earliest 3x3s I actually owned. Maybe the earliest one I still have, I don't know exactly. Some random picture cube. Next up here, this thing turns pretty horribly. I don't remember what the brand name on it is, but it's a Void Cube. As you can see, maybe some breaking would be better. But it kind of almost pops into place like it has bearings right now. But anyway, it kind of has wire drawing stickers on it, and they're very reflective, so kind of a neat cube, all in all, white plastic. This is not solved. This is a ghost cube. Actually, let's see, I thought I had one side solved, but maybe that got messed up when I threw it over here or something. But anyway, this is a M brand ghost cube. I've yet to solve it. I've gotten really close a couple times, a couple pieces away. It's really hard in the last layer to try and figure it out. I don't know. Still haven't wrapped my head around it. May never, but I probably will. Next up here, this is a Tut Minx, I believe is what it's called, or the new Tut Minx by Very Puzzle. I have the box sitting right over there. As you can see, it's not quite solved yet. I actually had it down to all but one of these before, and or all but one of these, something like that, or whatever. And then I tried a couple of different things to try and get that last layer. Have not quite figured out the last layer yet. I'll figure it out eventually. But anyway, there's Tut Minx. Next up here, I have two Mar Nano Cubes at 15mm. These are definitely the smallest mass-produced 3x3s, but you'd have to put them together yourself. They turn very poorly, or I should say they turn very well, but they pop super easily. The cores break and all that, so I mean they're just for display. Next up here, we have another dollar store cube. This one's actually a little bit smaller than 57mm, and as you can see, turns very horribly, as a out-of-the-box dollar store cube generally does. Next up here, I have a variety of Angry Birds picture cubes. I think I got these in a lot of 6 on eBay for $2, so that's why I picked them up. Kind of party favor cubes or something. Had 6 of them, now I have 4 of them. Not sure what happened to the other ones, but there's Angry Birds picture cubes. A couple of them, since I've solved them quite a bit, actually turn very well. The other ones that don't turn very well turn very badly and very stiff. That one's actually not bad either. I don't know, maybe I don't have a bad turning one here, but anyway, they turned pretty poorly out of the box. Next up here, the should have won the YJ. I believe this is a YJ House 2x2 but I misplaced it or missed it and did not get it in there. It's just a house 2x2, as the name suggests, very plain. Next up here, I actually don't know what cube this is. It may be another Cyclone Boys or something similar, but anyway, it is a cube. I lost the center cap behind my desk here, and I have to go find it still. So that's what it is. Next up here, so I'm going to shake you around inside. This is a Diane Zanchi Mini, 42 millimeters, with a black side, old stickerless scheme, which is why I picked it up, kind of for collection purposes. But also sell it from time to time. The center caps tend to pop on this one super easily. Even if the tension is cranked way down, it still pops very easily. At least the center caps pop out, not the pieces. Next up here, Cube Twist, Fisher Cube, stickerless. This one has a pink side, and it actually is really weird because all the internal plastic is blue. So, just kind of an oddball puzzle. Turns fairly well. It's from Cube Twist. It's a fairly good cube. Next up here, this one turns horribly. This is what I'm saying with snap together puzzles, how they do not last super long. Same with the YJ Foot Cube. This one is very, very loose, just from use and everything else. It's basically at the end of its life. Next up here, did show this in the Yuxin thing. This is another Yuxin 2x2. Turns fairly well. And then here is another superhero attacks cube. It actually was solved. There you go. If I get it all solved, it's all solved like that. This one still works. As you can see, I have two of those. Next up here, this is a Fengshi or Lim Cube, a deformed centrosphere, I believe that's called, stickerless, and quite a neat puzzle. I'll be doing a review on this puzzle pretty soon. As you can see, it turns fairly well. It's actually in very tight tensions right now, so I could probably try and loosen it a little bit and get more corner cutting, but just due to the nature of the puzzle, it doesn't really need it. As you can see, center layer, and then it's kind of like a 2x2. It's like a 3x3 inside a 2x2. It's pretty odd. Next up here, I actually don't know the brand on these. They did have a brand when I bought them, but I don't remember. It has a Diane-esque mechanism. These are concave cubes, actually. It took me a second to remember what those were called. Man, it's late, I need coffee. Anyway, there's some kind of weird like color anomalies on there. As you can see with the oranges are different shades. Same with the reds on this one here. So I don't know exactly, and they really don't turn very well, and they pop unless you have a really tight tension. Pretty catchy. So maybe once I break them in and lubricate them, they get a little bit better, but I have heard these are just inherently pretty bad. But had to have them. Concave cubes, have two of them. And next up here, this is actually a normal sized, or like I was saying, extended outwards pillowed cube, unlike the Yuxin pillowed. Forget what brand this one is. It really doesn't have a big name brand, I should say. It's just like one of those little small, weird brands, Z-Cube or something. And it turns okay. Next up here, this may be a Cube Twist. I forget the brand name exactly. It's actually fairly well constructed for what it is. It's a maze cube, but with a color scheme, so it's actually solvable. Or I should say easy to solve compared to other maze cubes I've had. Just kind of like cheap dollar store variety. As you can see, it's on the solid state right now. But that's what that is. Next up here, this is a Cube Twist Unequal Cube. This one could probably use some cube, or say some lube on the core, because it is really kind of stiff. But it turns fairly well, and it could turn better with some lubrication. Dollar store advertising cube. This one actually turns fairly well, so maybe it's a $2 cube, as I've hinted in my other video. But as you can see, this is just a little bit larger than normal 3x3, and it's an advertising cube. Next up here, Cube Twist 3x3. Actually turns fairly well. Fairly impressed with that. For what it is, it's interesting. Has pink side instead of red, so it makes it cool for the collection. Next up here, this is a, what is that brand? QiYi. I'm pretty sure it's a QiYi translucent blue DIY cube that I put together and have not stickered yet. As you can see, I actually made it sort of into a dice cube, kind of like that other thing even before I knew that existed, and that was made with Sharpie, so it does not work very well. Next up here, this is a X Cube gear cube. As you can see, turns fairly well, but not super great. It's gonna take me a while to get back to the set now, but anyway, I guess that's what that is. X Cube gear cube. Next up here, this is one I did not show in the Rubik's brand, but I should have. This is a Chex advertising cube from the 1980s. As you can see, it turns about 0 out of 10 because it's full of like, I don't know, dust and cube stuff and whatever. So if you broke this in, it actually turned just as well as any other, but it's a Chex advertising cube for display. Next up here, I can't remember if this is a Z cube or something different. This is a 2x2x3, maybe Lan, something like that. I thought it was sold under a different name. So anyway, 2x2x3, old school. Doesn't turn very well. Next up here is Sudoku Cube. Never even tried to solve this thing. Well, I should say I've tried, but not seriously. Anyway, it turns very poorly. It's just a little bit better than dollar store quality. Snap together. And next up here, a Snake Maze Cube, also unsolved, also snap together dollar store quality. Next up here, a Fengshi Lim Cube Ghost 2x2. I have solved this one a couple times, mostly by luck than anything else. But basically it's just a Ghost 2x2. It's actually a lot easier than the Ghost 3x3. Next up here, this is a cake cube, possibly by Sheng or something similar. It's a 3-layered UFO. I don't remember what the exact name is, but basically all these sides are the same color, top and bottom. Next up here is this probably also a Cube Twist or whatever brand these puzzles are made by. It's the same as the Maze Cube. Anyway, this is a 20 color cube. I'm not even going to try and guess it. I guess it's 4 on each side, but they overlap and all that. So anyway, it's just a different color scheme to a cube like this one, 14 color cube, something like that. Turns fairly well. Next up here is another Cube Twist. It's a Cube Twist Axis Cube and stickerless. This one has yellow internals. I don't know exactly what the deal is with them putting different colored internals in them, but that's interesting. So anyway, Axis Cube. Next up here, I don't know what brand this is. Probably a Cubicle. I bought it from the cubicle.us, so I'm assuming 1x1. It's solid epoxy, and it's pretty nice. Size of a 2x2 QiYi. 25 millimeters, I believe. Next up here, Shengshou. This is a hexagonal barrel or octagonal barrel or something like that. Same as that new old stock puzzle I was showing a while ago, but this is a modern variant, so that's kind of neat. Next up here, I forget the exact, this might be Maru branded, but this is another one with a different color thing there, and actually there's a corner twist. That's kind of strange. I wonder when that happened, when I twisted the corner. But anyway, because no other corners are twisted, it must have had a corner twist somehow. Anyway, it turns okay, and actually an intentional mechanism. At first I kind of knocked it for having really cheap feeling plastic. I thought it was kind of like one of those dollar store cubes. It seems okay. After further inspection here, it has a Rubik's brand mechanism, but it works okay. Next up here, another dollar store cube. This is really odd. I'm not sure what to think about this. I'm not sure how to feel about this, but there is some guy's face on there. Okay. Anyway, next up here we have a Diansheng Blade Cube, the existential cube unboxing knife, right? Now I've never tried to unbox a cube with this, but it could work. Anyway, Diansheng Blade, really interesting shape modification. Almost every YouTuber has one, or every YouTuber. I don't know. I don't know all that stuff. Anyway, Diansheng Blade, oddball shape modification, has these giant corner pieces, so that's kind of neat. Next up here, I have a set of 3 snakes. As you can see, this one's in that pattern, this one's in that pattern, and I don't know what happened to the other one because the kids like to play with them, so whatever, just have those 2 in my office right now. Anyway, there is I forget what brand these are. My first one I had was actually pretty good. This one's really bad. Pyromorphics, basically the previously mass-produced, I don't know, kind of other one there. It's a lot bigger than a normal, I think it's about the same size as a normal Pyraminx or a normal Master Pyraminx. It's pretty large, and it's solvable. It has this really weird clicky kind of feel to it. So I'm not sure what I think about that one, but it's interesting. Let's see exactly what other puzzles I have here. I know I have a couple more. I have another stickerless Zhanchi somewhere. Not sure. I don't see that many Zhanchi. I have another 42mm Zhanchi with the normal stickerless new scheme. But actually, looking around, that's coming to the end of it. Anyway, next up here, let's zoom out a little bit for this one. See my mess to either side. This is a Star Trek puzzle cube. As you can see, it's about a 75mm size. I mean, it's pretty large, made by Rabbit Tanaka, some sort of advertising agency or something, in 2007. Can't find a lot about it. Found it on the Puzzle Museum, and other than that, this one is sealed and pretty neat. Found it at some sort of thrift store. Next up here, we have the GAN 2x2, or the GANs 2x2, depending on who you ask and what kind of pronunciation you use. Basically, this is made out of all the 3x3 boxes, and I actually got this in a lot of things, but this was bought for $75 or whatever, wherever you can buy these. So it's pretty neat. It can hold 3x3s, but it's not very solvable once it has 3x3s in it. Next up here, and probably last, I guess we'll see if I have any more to clean up, I have the Shengshou super big 3x3. This is 18 centimeters across. Mine turns pretty well, and actually I had some worries that the screws were stripped early on, but I think those have been resolved. I don't think it turns pretty well. Anyway, so this is just a stickerless Shengshou super big 3x3. I need to get on buying some of those off Light Cake because I believe they're at like $9 each or something, $15 each, whatever. They seem cheap when I looked them up. So anyway, I think that's about it. I'm just looking around for 1 minute here. I think we're finally to the end. That's crazy. Whew, man, that video was a killer to film. Will be a killer to edit, and hopefully it was a killer to watch and you enjoyed watching it. Whew. It's about 1:30 a.m. I'm gonna get some coffee and get going for the morning. Seems kind of strange, doesn't it? Well, my sleeping schedule right now, basically I get up late and then I stay up all night and then I keep going and whatever. Anyway, irrelevant. I am done with the video for today. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe below if you enjoyed. Stay tuned for more cubing videos in the future. QiYi out. Goodbye. More of a documentation than anything. I just decided before I get more cubes, might as well do a cube collection video. That was a great idea.